The restaurant was buzzing that night, filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the faint sound of live music drifting from the corner stage. But in the middle of it all, Emily sat alone at the elegantly set table by the window, staring at her untouched glass of water. Her heart was pounding harder than it should for a simple evening out. After all, this was supposed to be her first step into normalcy again, her first date in nearly 3 years. She had rehearsed every possible scenario in her mind. Yet, deep down, she knew nothing could truly prepare her. Emily was not just any woman waiting nervously at a restaurant. She was the CEO of a multimillion-dollar tech company, admired, feared, and respected in the business world. But tonight, all the money, titles, and power in the world couldn't protect her from the vulnerability she felt. Because Emily was also paralyzed from the waist down. The accident that had changed her life happened in an instant. A speeding truck, a shattered car, and the sound of her own screams echoing as everything went black. She had survived, but her legs had not. Since then, Emily had built walls so high around her heart that even she couldn't see over them. But her best friend had convinced her to try something new, something terrifying, a blind date. She had imagined a charming man walking in, offering her flowers, maybe making her laugh nervously before they eased into conversation. But the minutes ticked by, and no one showed. 1 hour became 2. Emily's chest ached with disappointment. She wanted to leave, but pride held her in place. She didn't want the world to see her as weak. So, she waited, hiding her pain behind a flawless poker face. Then, the restaurant door swung open with a loud creak. A man stepped inside, not the polished, suit-wearing type she had pictured. Instead, he was rugged, wearing a worn leather jacket, oil-stained jeans, and boots that had clearly seen better days. His hands were rough, scarred, the kind of hands that fixed things that were broken. He glanced around awkwardly, running a hand through his messy dark hair, until his eyes landed on her. And that was how Jake, the neighborhood mechanic, walked straight into Emily's life. At first, Emily thought it must be a mistake. Surely this grease-covered stranger wasn't her blind date. But Jake walked right up to her table, his smile crooked but genuine. "Emily," he asked softly, almost as though he expected her to turn him away. She raised an eyebrow, masking her confusion with sarcasm. "You're not exactly what I pictured." "And you're a lot more intimidating than I pictured," Jake admitted with a nervous chuckle, pulling out the chair across from her. "I'm not late, am I?" Emily stared at him, speechless. Her original date hadn't shown up. This man clearly wasn't part of her evening plans. And yet, something in his eyes stopped her from sending him away. They weren't filled with pity or forced politeness like so many others she encountered. Instead, they held something raw. Respect. Curiosity. Maybe even admiration. Against her better judgment, Emily allowed him to stay. The conversation that followed was awkward at first. She tested him with sharp remarks, waiting for him to trip up or reveal pity. But Jake never did. He talked about cars, about how he grew up fixing engines with his father, about the freedom of working with his hands. When she mentioned her company, he didn't flinch or treat her like she was untouchable. He just leaned back, grinning. "Guess we both fix things, huh? You with computers, me with engines." For the first time in years, Emily felt something stir in her chest. She laughed. Not the forced, polite laugh she often gave in meetings, but a real, warm laugh that surprised even her. Still, challenges loomed. Their worlds couldn't have been more different. Emily lived in glass offices, corporate jets, and the endless noise of power struggles. Jake lived in grease-stained garages, late-night diner meals, and simple, honest work. People whispered behind Emily's back, questioning why someone of her status would even talk to a mechanic. Some even accused Jake of chasing her wealth. But he never once asked her for anything. All he offered was his time, his presence, and his quiet belief that she deserved happiness. Yet Emily's biggest battle wasn't society, it was herself. She struggled with her insecurities, the silent voice that whispered, "He'll leave once he realizes what life with you really means." When Jake reached for her hand, she often pulled away, afraid of needing someone again. Her paralysis was not just physical, it had become emotional, too. But Jake was patient. He showed up when she tried to push him away. He joked when her mood turned bitter. He adjusted his world just to make her feel like she belonged in his. When her wheelchair broke one afternoon, leaving her stranded outside her office, Jake drove across the city, tools in hand, and fixed it on the spot. Then he looked at her and said something she would never forget. "Emily, you're not broken. You don't need fixing. But if you ever feel like your world's falling apart, I'll be there with my wrench." Her heart melted. For the first time since her accident, she believed she could be loved, not for her power, not despite her disability, but simply for being herself. Their love wasn't easy. They faced whispers, raised eyebrows, even harsh insults. There were nights Emily cried herself to sleep, terrified of the future. But Jake never wavered. He reminded her that love wasn't about matching lives, it was about building a new one together. Slowly, Emily stopped hiding behind her CEO mask and allowed herself to just be Emily. A woman who deserved to smile, laugh, and dream again. And the woman who thought she'd never feel whole again found herself falling in love with the man who had walked into her life by accident. A blind date disaster had turned into the beginning of a love,